So now we will turn to the second item on our agenda. If everybody who is here for that second item, and I know there are a number of you from the Public Service Commission, from PEPCO, Washington Gas, WSSC, the People's Council, if you all want to come up now, that would be wonderful. No particular order. Excellent. Welcome, everybody. Thank you. The second item on our agenda is what we've called utility residential cost trends and customer assistance programs. Over the last number of months, we have been hearing from residents who have been receiving their bills and who are alarmed and dismayed and, quite frankly, worried about their own economic circumstances and being able to pay those utility bills, keeping their house warm, keeping the water flowing, and being able to heat food on their stove. And in most instances, these are not small fluctuations, but large percentage changes. And we have to do everything that we can to make sure that our families are able to stay healthy, safe, housed, and heated as well. And wanting to have this conversation to help us better understand, but also help our residents understand the complexities that go into their utility bills, and for all of us to have a better understanding of what we need to do moving forward in order to reduce the high cost of living and to bend the curve as it relates to what appears to be ever increasing utility costs. I just want to read one email, a comment that was shared with me. Someone had written on my Facebook page, "I'm on a fixed income and my PEPCO bill has quadrupled these last few months. My last two bills are over $830 for a small townhouse." And stories continue. And my inbox and phone have been flooded with people just sharing their concerns. And they've all been grounded in the question is, why is this happening? And so this conversation is grounded to try to understand that question as to why. And so I appreciate all of you joining us. What I hope we get out of today's conversation are a better understanding of three things. Transparency, what's driving these increases, accountability, are billing practices fair and accurate, and then also relief. What options are being provided either by you or other government programs to help people who can least afford these bills. And so while we put this into a broader context of rising utility bills, not only in Montgomery County, but across the state and across the region, we want to make sure that residents of Montgomery County are not disproportionately carrying any burden that might be affecting the region. And with that, I welcome my colleagues if they have any opening thoughts before we get to panels. Okay. Before I turn it over to Mr. Levchenko, I think it would be helpful if everybody could introduce themselves so we start this conversation.
Good afternoon. I'm Letitia Carolina Powell, and I'm the Budget Division Manager with WSSC Water.
Good afternoon. Courtney Edmonds. I am the Director of Strategic Partnerships and Community Impact at WSSC Water.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. Danielle Friedman, Manager of Governmental and External Affairs for PEPCO.
Turn your microphone up. Right button. There you go.
Good afternoon, Chair Glass, Council members Balcom and Stewart. David Lapp, Maryland People's Council, and we are an independent state agency that represents residential utility customers in federal and state proceedings on utilities.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Andrew Lawson. I'm the Director of Regulatory Affairs at Washington Gas.
Good afternoon, Anita Brocato. I'm the Senior Manager of Collections and Payments with Washington Gas.
Thank you. Mr. Levchenko, turn it over to you for, I know, some of our presenters have slide presentations, and if you want to tee us up.
Yeah, I thought the best way to organize this is to have each of the speakers that provided presentation materials to go ahead and go through their presentations. I told them to try to keep them fairly brief, but that'll at least help get the information out there and perhaps spark some questions and discussion after the fact as well. I would suggest we start with our state folks from the Public Service Commission and from People's Council, and then we can move to the utilities after that. So I would suggest we start with the Public Service Commission. I can bring up the slides.
Sure.
So Ms. Bolton, is she?
She's not here.
Oh. Why don't we start with the People's Council then?
Mr. Lapp.
Mr. Lapp is definitely here.
I am here, and good afternoon again. First, our main work is before the Public Service Commission and PJM, which is the regional grid operator, and they run markets, and the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, or FERC. And we get involved when residential customers are impacted. I'm going to try and stick to my script, 12, 13 minutes, so I can get in the points I want to make. And should I just,
Just tell me next slide and I'll.
Okay, great. And actually, you can just, these are just some examples of our work. You can take a look at that. And next slide, please. And this is more of our work, and we've provided links here. You can, in the PDF, you can click the links to see these different parts of our work, and we have a lot of information on our website. On the middle right, you'll see our report on utility rates. And if you click on that image, it should take you to our website where you can find lots of information about utility rates, how rates show up on your utility bill, the important distinction between supply and distribution rates, and why rates have gone up so much so quickly. And you can find information specific to the Montgomery County utilities there, PEPCO, and Washington Gas. The state does not regulate WSSC, so we're not involved in WSSC, so I'm going to be focused on really the energy utilities. So I'm going to talk a little bit about utility regulation and what's driving up energy bills. And I'm not going to cover weather because weather drives up bills. We use more. And so, that's sort of a foundational element. We got cold weather, people use more, bills go up. Hot weather, same thing. Next slide, please. So this slide is intended to show how utilities make their money. And this is important to understand because it's counterintuitive to our usual experience with companies that operate in competitive markets. Those companies have a reason to minimize costs. Utilities earn their profits much like a mortgage company that wants to sell as many mortgages as possible because it profits from the interest on the mortgages. Each capital investment is like a mortgage loan to customers on which utilities earn a return. So this means that spending more on infrastructure raises profits. It means that with regulatory approval, utilities benefit from building infrastructure that may not be necessary or that could wait until later. Next slide, please. And this slide highlights the important distinction that's often missed. Here you see a BGE bill, but the bills for Washington Gas and PEPCO are similar in that they each have a delivery component or distribution component and a supply component. Delivery or distribution costs are a different animal than supply costs. Delivery costs are those that the state regulates and on which utilities earn their profits. The supply costs are subject to competitive markets, and this is where competitive retail supply comes in. Today, there are few, if any, competitive options, but if there were, it would only apply to the supply portion of the bill. What's important to remember about supply costs is they go up and down a lot. The biggest driver of supply costs for gas and electric service is the commodity price of gas, and that price is subject to markets and federal policy, and the state doesn't have a lot of control over those gas commodity costs. Next slide, please. Now, this slide shows the big increases in gas and electric distribution rates of the Maryland Exelon utilities. And I say the Exelon utilities because compared to the other for-profit Maryland utilities, Exelon's rates have increased at a drastically faster pace. And on the left, you can see that this winter, Washington Gas customers are paying less than half for the same delivery service as BGE customers, when as recent as 2015, about 10 years ago, they were paying about the same rate of 42 cents per therm. Washington Gas's rates have increased 4 cents per therm since 2015, while BGE's rates have gone up 55 cents. But you can see here that Washington Gas has a rate case pending that would increase its rates. For a customer that heats with gas, Washington Gas proposes to increase rates by almost 9 cents a therm, an increase of about 20%. And what's important to keep in mind is that Washington Gas is engaged in the same strategy of accelerated spending on gas infrastructure as BGE. It's just further behind. And if state regulation fails to change the policies that have driven up BGE's rates and they're driving an affordability crisis this winter for BGE customers, that same crisis will hit Washington Gas customers before too long. On the right, you can see how the Maryland Exelon electric utility rates have spiked since Exelon acquired them, especially Pepco and Delmarva. Pepco has a current rate case, and you can see on the right-hand side how significant that proposed rate increase is, 23% overall. And you can compare that at the bottom to Potomac Edison, the more or less flat line, which also serves Potomac Edison also serves part of Montgomery County. And you can see they've only had 2 rate increases in about 25 years. Pepco's current request would make 9 increases since 2016. And if allowed, Pepco's rates would be more than 3 times Potomac Edison's rates. We just filed testimony in the Pepco case, and our experts found that Pepco customers actually deserve a slight rate decrease. And you can see our press release on that testimony from earlier this week. It's on our website. All of these graphs show the importance of making sure utility regulation is effective over the long term. Once these rates go up, they're locked in for decades, and it's very difficult to bring them down in any significant way. Next slide, please. So this slide is important because it compares the costs that are provided through regulation of monopolies on the left to costs that are subject to competition and therefore go up and down on the right. Transmission costs on the bottom left are actually included in the supply portion of most customers' bills, and they've more than doubled in just the past decade. On the top right, you see the capacity market costs. These costs are about 20% or so of a customer bill. It obviously depends on where they are. And those costs have received a lot of the attention in the past year or so. And one thing you'll notice is that the price spike that has gotten a lot of attention is as high as it was because it came from a low point in the market. Data centers are driving up those capacity market and energy market costs. PJM's Independent Market Monitor estimates that data centers have driven up the capacity market costs over the last 3 auctions by $23 billion. And the other point that I'll reiterate is that these supply costs are volatile. They change day to day, month to month, and year to year, and they're subject to market competition and federal policy, and especially the commodity price of gas that the state can't really control. And if you look closely at the slide on the bottom right, you'll see that in 2020, energy costs were at a low point. Capacity costs above that were at a near low point. And when you compare supply costs to distribution costs, it's really easy to cherry pick and manipulate the numbers to achieve a result by choosing a low point in the supply market. And I noticed on Pepco's presentation, there's a slide that compares 2020 costs to 2025 costs. And that's the cherry picking I'm referring to. They picked a low cost energy price in 2020 and compared that to a high cost today to arrive at the purported conclusion that supply costs are mostly responsible for high utility bills today. It is true that supply costs are higher today than in 2020, but that's misleading because they're picking the lowest supply cost in the past decade and comparing it to today, and because distribution costs steadily increase and don't come back down. And if you look at 10 years back to 2015 and compare that to 2025, Pepco's average supply cost increased by 28%, while Pepco's distribution costs increased almost 3 times more, by 76%. 2015 is neither a high or low point for supply costs. So the 2015 to 2025 comparison better reflects what is actually driving costs up for customers. Also, transmission costs, as I said, are part of the supply costs, but are regulated like distribution costs, and they increased by almost 3 times from 2015 to 2025. And the point as far as state, what is in the state's control, the upper left is primarily what's in the state control. The state cannot do that much to affect those supply costs on the right. Next slide, please. And this slide shows critical information about what is happening in Maryland as far as electricity demand growth. Maryland's Exelon utilities are not seeing substantial growth, and in fact, this chart shows how these are PJM numbers, their projections, and through 2029, the Exelon utilities demand actually goes down. Let's see, this is based on 2026 forecast just released a few weeks ago. And aside from going down through 2029, the Exelon utilities projections are lower in the 2026 forecast than they were in the 2025 forecast. So those year-over-year projections actually have them going down. You'll see in Pepco's slides that they don't address Maryland-specific information, but pivot instead to focus on PJM-wide information that reflects massive data center growth, mostly occurring outside of Maryland. So next slide. And this shows that PJM-wide demand growth, and you can see it's extraordinary. Hyperscale data centers can be built quickly and bring city-sized energy needs. Virginia data centers are projected to add 12,000 megawatts of new electric demand by 2031. And that amount of demand is about what has been built up for the entire state of Maryland for more than a century. And they're building it in just five or 6 years. Next slide, please. And this slide shows where the data centers are driving increased energy demand. And this is through 2030. And you can see most of it is occurring in just 4 states. And the thin sliver at the top is in the Exelon zones in Maryland. Maryland customers should not be incurring costs to these data centers. Having Maryland customers pay for those data centers would violate important principles of utility regulation that those who are causing the cost should be responsible for paying the costs. Equally important, it's implausible that Maryland customers, through utility rates or otherwise, could even pay for the massive amount of generation or other infrastructure necessary to serve this massive data center growth. Because of jurisdictional issues, Maryland policy cannot directly impact how data center load growth is regulated for those data centers that are outside of Maryland. But to bring my comments to a conclusion, and on a positive note, in recent months and even weeks, we've seen a lot of movement both from the White House, from PJM, and from governors in PJM. All that movement is directed toward requiring data centers to pay their full freight and be responsible for all the costs that they are driving. Our office is engaged at PJM and at the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, PJM's regulator, and we're fighting to prevent customers from bearing those data center costs. So with that, I'll be happy to answer questions, and again, thank you for the opportunity to speak here today.
Thank you very much for all of that information, and hopefully we can get those slides as well after the presentation. I don't know if Ms. Bolton has arrived. Ms. Bolton, if you want to come join us. We just received our presentation from the People's Council, so if you are ready, we will. There's an available seat. Right over here in the middle.
Hey, David.
Hi, how are you?
Doing okay. How are you?
We can talk about the traffic from Baltimore another time. But Ms. Bolton, as you get situated, if you could just introduce yourself for the record as well.
Yes, hello. I am.
Button to the far right on your dashboard. There you go.
Apologies. Hello, I am Stephanie Bolton, Director of the Consumer Affairs Division with the State of Maryland Public Service Commission.
Fantastic. Welcome. Thank you for being here. You are the second presenter in today's conversation, so I don't know if Mr. Levchenko has your slides.
Yeah, the slides are up, and I'll just tell me when you want to switch them.
Can do. Thank you. Next slide, please. So the Maryland Public Service Commission has been in operation for over 100 years. We regulate public utility companies that you see pictured here. Notably, we don't have much of a regulatory impact on WSSC. Their regulatory structure is a little bit different, but when it comes to Washington Gas and Pepco, yes, we are who you would talk to about that. We still have our 2024 stats up because the 2025 stats don't usually roll out until the very end of April, very beginning of May, but it has been another incredibly busy year for the Commission. Next slide, please. So my team, the Consumer Affairs Division, we answer complaints from the public. We help educate the public. We also work in compliance and enforcement. We investigate irregular findings, and we share resources, including energy assistance resources, which has been a big issue lately. In the calendar year 2025, we had 4,760 complaints. We're a relatively small team. There's about a dozen of us, and each complaint we receive gets an investigation, provided it's jurisdictional. We had a 79% increase in complaints from 2024 through 2025. The complaint issues that we receive, they seem rather broad, but pare it down. We've got billing, termination of service-related issues, miscellaneous electric issues, payment disputes, meter concerns. And with each of these issue topics, affordability is coming up again and again in complainant narratives. It is an ongoing refrain. It is, and has been for some time, the core of what we do in the Consumer Affairs Division. And we work closely with the Commission. I'm also a Commission advisor, so I keep them updated on what's going on, how people are responding to their energy bills. And we have had a very challenging year in hearing from what people are experiencing and trying to funnel them towards the available services. And that is part of why we are here today, I realize. Next slide, please. So this is the list of complaints filed against gas and electric utilities over the past 13 months. And I wanted to highlight in red where we have complaint increases over our 2024 numbers, what we expect to see versus the reality of what we're getting with our largest regulated companies. When it comes to smaller utilities like SMECO, a complaint bubble is going to look different than some of our larger regulated utilities like BG&E. I highlighted in red where we have increases of over 50% in complaint volume as compared to average monthly complaints in 2024. And there's no utility that isn't experiencing at least some complaint increase, at least some measure of the gravity of this situation. My counterpart, David, referred to an affordability crisis. That is not hyperbole. That is what people are out there feeling every day as they struggle to pay these bills. When we get meter complaints, it's people in stark disbelief that their bills are what they are. They think that there has to be some kind of technical issue that is causing this, because there's no way my bill should be this high for this kind of usage. When we have payment disputes, a lot of times it's people who may have received energy assistance benefits from the Office of Home Energy Programs who were saying, my benefits used to go, I get these every year, and they used to go so much farther than they used to. There has to be some kind of accounting issue about why they're not stretching as far as they once did. Affordability is touching pretty close to 90% of the complaints that we get. It is a pervasive issue. Next slide, please. And when it comes to why my utility bills are so high, there are myriad reasons, and I know that they are going to be discussed in depth by many different panelists, so I'll give you a little overview. Obviously you've got supply price increases. You're looking at the cost of generating the commodity when we talk about supply prices. See also the vitriol that we hear regularly against PJM, our local regional transmission organization. Are they government? No. Are they corporate? No. They're an independent nonprofit. So does that mean they're completely independent? I mean, nobody is. Everybody answers to someone. So they have a board and they have member companies. And if you're curious about how PJM members are voting, new at the PSC, we have PC 76, which is as a result of the 2025 Utility Transparency and Accountability Act, where votes that were made by member companies are now reported in that public docket. In addition, FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, regulates PJM. FERC makes a decision that you don't agree with, you take it to federal court, as has been done successfully recently in the event of a supply auction error in the Delmarva power market. So that's still churning through the system. I guess the thing to keep in mind with energy prices is this is such a slow moving thing. That was from what, 2022? That capacity auction that went out to the court, the federal court in D.C. that we just had.
That's the link in the top right corner of my second or third slide. That's a case we brought. The commission joined us in that case, and we succeeded in our federal appeals court a couple weeks ago. So
that can be the length of time it takes to make change happen. Something that was a result of the 2022 auction is now in 2026 getting some relief. So in addition to supply costs, there's of course distribution, your wires, pipes, substations, transformers, the cost of moving the energy to that end user. So we've seen that delivery rates are up for electricity, up for gas, and I see that no matter which narrative I'm looking at. There's some narratives that you see about why affordability is what it is right now that tend to come from the left of the political spectrum and the right of the political spectrum, but the facts are the facts here, and that distribution charges are definitely increased since, 2010, 2020, no matter when you look at it, it's increasing in many cases, if not all cases, faster than the rate of inflation. Now, of course, there's also load growth to consider. Residential growth has increased where it was once flat due to changes in weather patterns. You have data centers. David's large load growth slide told the story about how Maryland is impacted disproportionately by other states' choices in that regard. Then there's resource adequacy, which is, another fact is Maryland imports like 60% of its energy. And you hear that the outlook for energy is dire when we hear from our colleagues at PJM. The executive director of what's his title these days? The director of government services, Jason Stanek, said that last year the outlook for energy in Maryland was dire, and the conditions have not abated. Some argue that Maryland's policies have forced dispatchable generation, your coal, your natural gas, even nuclear hydropower that provide your base load. Some policies may have induced these operators to close, leading to a need to import more expensive commodities from outside the state. A lot of times those are fossil fuel commodities. So the generation coming online is not sufficient to replace the generation that is going or has recently gone offline. Resource adequacy, the new generation not coming on fast enough, sitting in the queue at PJM for so long that the project's no longer pencil. It's no longer economically viable for the developers to move forward with these projects once they get to the top of the queue and it's their turn to potentially move forward. Legislative mandates have been coming up as a driver of utility costs. That can be direct bill items. For example, the Empower Maryland surcharge. That helps Marylanders reduce energy usage, lower their bills, get appliance upgrades, weatherization, home energy checkups, essentially. And that's a program that's been in existence since 2008. That's nothing particularly new. But what is new is the increases to the surcharge. There were some changes to the way that the costs were accounted, and essentially we're paying off debt. It's not a cheap program. It's a valuable program, but at the end of the day, it's going to be cheaper in the long run to pay off any monies owed so that we don't pay what is essentially interest on that program to keep it running. It was taking out a chunk of something like 17% of the cost to operate that program. We're going to interest alone. Let's see, the regional greenhouse.
Do you have any more slides?
I do.
You want to? Yeah, we have a number of presenters. So.
I apologize. I was just going. We'll go to the next slide. Oh, I apologize. We'll go to the previous slide. So we're hearing a lot of dire stuff about the causes of the affordability crisis we're facing. What can people do? I know that Montgomery County is participating, but you can encourage your constituents to participate. They can file a petition to intervene in the PEPCO rate case ongoing right now. It was filed in October. We are expecting a decision in summer of 2026. The increase requested is $133 million, and the bill impact is looking like a projected $11.73 per month if everything that is requested is approved. It is technically past the deadline for joining, but you can still participate, you can ask anyway. We had somebody ask relatively recently, a citizen intervener who wanted to participate, has participated in other proceedings. You know, there's a good example in the public docket of how you can make that happen. Washington Gas, next slide, please. Washington Gas recently filed for a rate increase, and you can participate in this like you guys already have by making a petition to intervene. The public can do this as well. There's also going to be a public comment hearing coming up. It's not settled exactly when yet, but it's looking like April of 2026 that the public can participate in. If you don't want to participate live, you can write in your comments. And they'll become a part of the record. You can also follow along with this in other rate cases on the Commission's YouTube channel, either live or later. Next slide, please. I was in touch with Rigel Moore from the Office of Home Energy Program. She couldn't be here today, but you know, she gave me a little bit of a breakdown of how energy assistance is flowing right now, and I borrowed a chart from my counterpart at the Office of People's Counsel, Brandy Nealand, and this gives a little summary of how different types of benefits can be applied, because they're all just a little bit different, and this will be coming with everybody once we send out the slide deck to the group. Next slide, please. And in addition, the Commission we've opened a docket, and it's called PC 59, and we are creating a limited income mechanism as a result of legislation passed that enables us to do this, to provide a little extra protection for the low-income customers, the people who are using energy assistance every year, the people who struggle to pay their energy bills, is ongoing, and the amount of help that they receive from OHEP it's a wonderful thing to have, but it's not going far enough. The goal target energy burden is 6% of somebody's income, and we have people paying triple that easily. And especially in Baltimore City on the Eastern Shore, but across Maryland, it's an issue. And working together with community partners, we are creating a mechanism where eligible customers can save money. And one thing that I would encourage you all to do is to encourage your constituents to get in there and apply. Benefits like those available through the Maryland One app are notoriously underutilized, and the more people we can get signed up, the more people we can help.
Well, thank you very much for that presentation, Ms. Bolton. And just to put a fine point on that last point you made, that while we here talk about individuals being able to afford their homes, being rent burdened, that's 1/3 of their income going towards rent. For the PSC, it's 6% of their income going towards utility. That's the benchmark?
6% is the benchmark.
Great. Important data point to know. Thank you. Now we will turn it over to our utilities, and I'll turn it over to Pepco and Ms. Friedman.
Great. Thank you so much. Let me know if you can't hear me. We will start on slide 3, please. Perfect. Well, I will start from the beginning. I don't know if everyone at home knows what a utility is, but Pepco is your public utility engaged in the transmission, distribution of your electricity that flows to your homes in Prince George's and Montgomery counties in Maryland and the District of Columbia. We are, of course, regulated by the Public Service Commissions in DC and in Maryland, which means that they set our rates, they approve our rates, and we go through a process where we've talked a little bit about our rate cases, our investment plans, and what that means is we make investments in Montgomery County because Montgomery County has goals and economic development goals, climate goals. I think about the White Flint substation, where we knew that our Park Lawn substation would reach capacity by 2027, and We didn't want North Bethesda to have to shut down businesses, so we invested in our new substation at White Flint, and so we invested in that substation, and that's what is going into our investment plan that we are now putting forward to the PSC. So that's what the rate case looks like. So those investments have already been made. It's not forward-looking, it's retroactive. And we are sort of ranked on our reliability. If you noticed this past ice storm, you didn't have an outage. We are ranked number 2 in reliability in the nation. Next slide, please. But we're also a good neighbor. You know, we try to be a good neighbor and invest in our community. We've been at this for 125 years, so we focus on not just keeping the lights on, but being a part of our community, whether it's our energy saving programs where we've delivered more than 4.5 megawatts hours in energy savings, or whether it's our diverse supplier spending. In 2024, we spent $331 million on our diverse suppliers, which shakes out to about 40 cents for every dollar we spend. And we're very proud of that. Next slide. Next slide, please. But we're here because, Chair Glass, you asked a very important question, which is why have we seen bills so high? Not over the last 10 years, but literally over the last 6 months or so. And it's because, you know, electricity rates are rising due to supply prices. So you've heard that from my colleagues sitting at the panel with me. Price volatility is increasing as supply becomes constrained. In 2001, Pepco sold off our generation assets, becoming a fully regulated transmission and distribution company. So we don't generate electricity at Pepco. We deliver it to your homes in our poles and wires through our substations. That's the delivery fee that you see on your bill. That's the 1/3 of the bill that Pepco controls. And so that's what gets decided through that rate case that I was just talking about. So once the PSC decides what that outcome is, that's what goes on your bill. That's that delivery fee, ultimately. Electricity rates are rising because of that constrained supply. You've heard of Brandon Shores, you've heard of Calvert Cliffs nuclear facility. That's an example of a generation facility. When that becomes constrained, when supply becomes constrained, but we're still seeing demand go up, as we are, price becomes volatile. PJM is responsible for that balance, for that supply and demand. Pepco does not control that supply and demand, but it is a pass-through cost onto our customers, onto their bills, as you've already heard from my colleagues on the panel here. PJM is also responsible for the planning of the transmission grid. I'm not blaming them, of course, but it is just something that they're working through, and they work through that through auctions. Next slide, please. And this is just a graphic representation showing what I just said. And I know it was kind of shown to be cherry picking, but it is true that we've seen average supply prices go up more than 60% since 2020. While average distribution bills, yes, and we know we averaged BGE, DPL, and Pepco because they are Maryland utilities here in Maryland, have gone up about 4.6% per year. But we know that FERC testified on Capitol Hill just this week that peak demand will rise more than 20% over the next 10 years. That is a fact. You can take data from anywhere, and we know that demand's going to go up. The supply is not going up. So that supply and demand will still be imbalanced. But at the same time, we know that we do have a responsibility with that 4.6%. My colleagues are correct. We have a responsibility with that 4.6%, and we take that seriously. And we know that we have a responsibility to the reliability of our grid, and we have a responsibility to our customers. Next slide, please. And we're making sure that we're driving down the frequency of outages, and we've done it. Over the last 10 years, we've driven a 57% decrease in the frequency of outages. We know that we're at our best ever frequency of outages in 2024. When we did have an outage, it was for about 40 minutes or less. and we want to make it better, and we know that that takes investments. Our poles and wires can always be better, and we want to get there, and that takes investments. Like I said, this past ice storm, we had less than 200 outages on our grid. But we want to get to zero, right? We want to get to zero on a blue sky day. And we can get there, and it'll take investments, and we're working there. Next slide, please. This slide is a depiction of a year-over-year expectation for our customers. So this is real life. This is what our customers can see January 2025 to January 2026. And this shows exactly what I've been saying, what my colleagues at the PSC have been saying. We have not seen a distribution rate increase because we have not had a rate increase in over 2 years. We have not asked for a rate increase in over 2 years. We have not filed a rate increase in over 2 years. And so that's what you're seeing on the left-hand side here. But prices are going up. What customers are feeling is real. It's validated, right? We know that bills are high, and that is because of the right side of this page. We've seen a generation increase here of $8.52, and the transmission fees are going up. But, it's a little bit of that Empower increase, like my colleague said. That went up $5.63 on January 1st. It does pay for some great programs, but it does cut a little bit into that bill increase, leading to a $16.34 a month increase for our customers on January 1st of this year. Next slide, please. And what's driving this, right? What is driving that supply increase need? It's load growth, data centers, right? Load growth, an unprecedented amount of new load growth coming online with no new generation to balance it. Since 2018, PJM has seen over 6,000 megawatts of retirements with only 1,600 megawatts of new generation. Next slide, please. And again, it's another depiction of exactly what I'm saying. And it's showing up on our customers' bills. And this is recent. We've all seen this in the news. At PJM's auction, an unprecedented new load growth capacity market increased by 800%. Market shares went up from $29 a megawatt to $329 a megawatt. And that was only because of the brokered cap between the Pennsylvania governor and PJM. And, who knows what will happen in the future if supply does not come on, new generation does not come online. Next slide, please. But, we're working as well as we can to do our part to bring new generation online as a utility. We believe that we have a solution, but we also know that this is real life. This is happening right now. And so we have programs in-house that will help our customers today. Next slide, please. So let's talk about our bill support programs. Our budget billing program is a great program for our customers to take advantage of. This is an easy program that our customers can just pay an average one easy payment each month. That's just an average payment of all of their payments every year. And anyone can take advantage of it. I highly recommend it. Or our payment arrangements, our high usage alerts, our assistance finder tool, and of course our customer relief fund. We're very happy that we're rolling out a second round of our customer relief fund, which was $2 million that Exelon put forward on our own because we know that energy assistance is critical, especially right now. Climate change is real, it's not going away, and temperatures are low, bills are high because of that supply problem, and we want to help our customers manage their costs. Between our programs and the governor's credits, there's money available, and we want our customers to utilize these funds. Next slide, please. We also have our energy assessment programs. So our Quick Home Energy Checkup program allows our customers to have someone come to their home for free and walk through their entire home and assess it for how to make their home more energy efficient. This is completely for free, and anyone can take advantage of it. We also have our home performance with Energy Star, which gets a certified contractor involved who's associated with Energy Star. It does have a low cost, but we have low to moderate income programs available for those who cannot afford that $100 cost tag. I highly recommend both of these programs, and we will make them available for anyone who needs to take advantage of them. Next slide, please. We can skip this slide for the sake of time. And lastly, I just want to double down on our customer relief fund. We are opening up a second round of our customer relief fund. Here in Maryland, we're rolling out $750,000 more for energy assistance. This is money that's available right now for those who need energy assistance. We want to make sure that our customers take advantage of these available dollars. So please do let us know how we can be helpful. Thank you so much.
Thank you for all of that information. And now we will turn it over to Washington Gas.
Hi, Andrew Lawson, Director of Regulatory Affairs. We've been asked to keep it to 4 minutes, so we prepared a shorter, tighter presentation. We're going to make it.
Okay.
No. Hey,
I feel bad.
I'm going to talk you through a little bit about our current bill, kind of where that's gone over the last 10 years. I can give you a little more insight over the longer term. A little bit about our rate case that we have filed that Mr. Lapp and Ms. Bolton have mentioned, and kind of what that looks like, and then where our overall bill trend and then our distribution rates, the portion of the bill that we earn a profit on, as Mr. Lapp mentioned, how that's trended over time. Then Ms. Mercado will talk you through some of our payment arrangements and billing assistance, and then we'll be available for any questions.
Thank you.
Okay, just quickly, I did an analysis of our actual annual bills using actual rates for each month and customer usage levels by month, because those rates can vary, right? We have a highly seasonal business. Most of our usage and billings occur in the wintertime, so the bulk of our charges and customer bills happen there. But wanted to just give you a breakdown. Our average bill for 2025 was around $1,000 a month, and then that results in an average monthly bill of about $85. And I broke it down here on the left so you could see what makes up that amount. That's the customer charge is a fixed monthly amount. That is part of the cost customers pay for the infrastructure and operation of our system. So that goes into the, I guess, profit section that Mr. Lapp referred to. We also have the purchase gas cost. That is the costs we incur to go out and procure natural gas on the market and bring it to our system for our customers to use. That is a pass-through. There is no markup or profit that the company earns on that part of our bill. That really is in line with the supply costs that others have referred to. Then you have our net distribution charge. And you'll see in OPC slides, they did make reference to our distribution charges, and they were showing the gap between ours and the BG&E distribution charge. That is the other portion of our for-profit or system operation costs. So if you look at the total of the bill, the distribution charge and the customer charge is our base rate costs. That is what we cost us for base rates. You see two surcharges down there. Stride is our it's the accelerated pipe replacement mechanism. It's a surcharge that funds some of the replacement of some of our higher risk materials that PHMSA has asked us to remove from our system, and we believe it is appropriate to do so. The bottom piece is the Empower Maryland surcharge that funds energy efficiency programs. I would expect that $299 average amount to trend up a little in January and 26 and beyond. As Ms. Bolton mentioned, we are paying off. We're transitioning how we pay for those programs. They were amortized. Costs were amortized over 5 years. Now we're transitioning to an expensing model. So rather than pay as you go, rather than an amortization. So if you look at our total bill compared to inflation since 2015, I promise you I did not cherry pick. If I had gone back a little further, it would look more favorable for our bill. We did have a period of high supply costs throughout what I call the aughts, right, from 2005 and on. So our total bill has been in line with inflation, save for those little blips there in 22 and 23. We're driven by supply costs. Everyone's mentioned the supply market has gotten tighter. There less supply is being brought onto the market. Infrastructure is harder and more costly to build. So, but we're proud of this. We think we're well positioned. Next slide. A little bit about our Maryland rate case. We filed our first rate case in nearly 3 years on December 29th. We did ask for a total increase of $82.5 million. $67 million of that is net of stride. And by that I mean 67 is new requested revenues. The remainder, the delta between those two numbers, is already being recovered in that stride surcharge I mentioned. We estimate it'll add an approximate $7.87 for the average residential heating customer. That's about 8.5%. When you map that out over 3 years, right, since the last time we increased it, it's about in line with inflation. And so what I've done here, similar to what I did on the first slide, I took a look at our distribution and customer charges combined, and then mapped kind of how those compared to inflation since 2015. And where we are now is we are under inflation there. Now, if the rate increase is granted in full, it'll put us about there in line with that inflation amount. And for us, at least, the rate increases are more lumpy. It's base rate increases are more lumpy. It goes up and then it's flat for a little bit and it goes. So I don't see that as being anything out of the ordinary. When you look at our residential rates, they remain low in comparison to other utilities in Maryland and the Mid-Atlantic. And I think we're proud of that. I think we're well positioned moving forward. And we believe our rates and average bills keep us in that affordable level, particularly when you look at that 6% metric that was discussed earlier. If you allocate 3% of that, which is generally done, you allocate half to electric, half to gas for dual fuel customers, particularly based on the median income in this area. Our bills are affordable all the way down to 25% of the median income without any assistance. So we think we're well positioned for the future.
Thank you. And I'll just take a moment to talk through some of our customer assistance programs, so to include payment plans and other options like that. Some of these will sound a little similar, so I'll just go through them quickly. We do offer an installment plan. Our current is that we are offering up to 12 months in general for our customers and even up to 24 for customers receiving energy assistance. We also do offer a budget bill plan, which very similarly, it really truly spreads the cost of our very seasonal bills over the cost of the year. And then we do also have an automated payment plan. We do have several ways to enroll into all of these programs, just with customer ease in mind. All are available to, customers are able to apply online. They can also do so on our portal directly and also call in, again, for customer ease there. Next slide. And here, this just shows a few of all of our payment options. Any customer can call in, again, for any questions that they do have, but we do offer payment by cash, by internet or mobile app, by mail, by phone, and then also walk-in payment centers as well. And next slide. And this, just to go over, we do work closely with the Maryland's Office of Home Energy Programs with the MEEP program, and that's just the financial assistance for home energy bills. The enrollment year ends each year on June 30th, and there's just a link as well for more information.
I got it. The last slide is just to give you a little information about the Washington Area Fuel Fund. It's the company's signature charitable endeavor. We pay all of the administrative costs for the program. That way, every dollar we raise can go towards assisting customers in need. We service all fuel types throughout portions of Maryland, Virginia, and the district. So application for assistance opens from January to May, and we're proud of this program.
Very good. Thank you very much for your presentation. And the last panelists that we'll hear from, the last utility, is WSSC, but we speak with you quite frequently as we do have to review and approve your budget, so we are intimately aware of your model and some of the situations. So don't think that we need to have full backgrounds on everything, but I'll defer to you as you go through your slides.
Thank you so much. Again, Courtney Edmonds with WSSC Water, joined by my colleague Letitia Carolina Powell. Next slide. Most of you are probably familiar with WSSC Water. We're the 8th largest water and wastewater utility in the country. We have been in the community for 107 years, during which we've had no drinking water quality violation ever. And we're providing services to 1.9 million residents in Prince George's and Montgomery counties. Next slide. I'll hand it over to Letitia to walk us through some trends.
Good afternoon again. So on this slide, it shows that data collected from hundreds of water and sewer utilities over the past 25 years demonstrate that the cost of water service has increased at more than twice the rate of inflation and income. WSSC Water has fared better than the industry-wide example shown here, but costs are increasing here as well. This is due to a variety of factors, including the rising cost of operations, specifically power, chemicals, supplies, and healthcare. In addition, there's a need to repair the aging infrastructure and the cost to comply with the stringent regulations that we face. The end result is that water bills take a bigger percentage of household incomes and can present an affordability burden to some of our customers. Next slide. Over the last 26 years, our cumulative bill impact has been below that of our regional peers, and the amount only reached the point of being higher than the CPI index in 2025.
Thanks, Letitia. We'll now focus on our customer financial assistance programs. The EPA has provided guidance on customer affordability best practices, many of which we have in place at WSSC Water, namely our bill discounts, flexible payment terms, temporary assistance programs, and funding for water efficiency measures like leak repairs, which I'll highlight today. Next slide. So I did want to take a moment just to highlight that there is an ongoing need for permanent federal and state water assistance programs throughout the country. In 2021, the U.S. government created the first ever low-income household water assistance program, also known as LIWAP, funded initially as a result of the economic challenges of COVID, but really focused on ensuring that all households had access to water to protect public health. During that time, LIWAP served more than 1.5 million households and supported more than 16,000 water and wastewater utilities across the country. Locally, WSSC Water was able to provide customers with $6.1 million through the LIWAP program until funding ran out in 2023. According to an EPA study from 2024, there are more than 19 million U.S. households that still lack access to affordable water services, and that leads to $8.8 billion in assistance needed each year for our customers. And so, as you can see, the need certainly continues for permanent water assistance programs. Next slide. And so I'll speak specifically about what WSSC Water has done to assist customers in Montgomery County. In fiscal year 2025, we provided $1.4 million in financial assistance to more than 4,200 customers in Montgomery County. And we've been increasing our investment in those programs each year. You'll see over the past 3 years, we've had significant increases in financial assistance, starting at $3.5 million, increasing to $7.7, and this year, approximately $9 million. Our preliminary proposed budget for FY27 includes a 20% increase in financial assistance over this year's funding. Next slide. We have a number of financial assistance programs to help our customers in need. If you just stay on this slide, I will try to highlight many of them in the interest of time. The Water Fund is a partnership that we have in place with the Salvation Army. The program allows for up to $500 in assistance over a 12-month period. And in FY25, we were able to assist 448 customers in Montgomery County in the amount of $215,000. The next program is our Customer Assistance Program, also known as the CAP program. Through that program, we were able to offer $737,000 in waived fees for more than 3,000 customers in Montgomery County. Next 2 slides, please. Yep, one more. The next program I wanted to highlight is our CAP leak repair program. This is a partnership that we have in place with the Habitat for Humanity of Metro Maryland. This helps customers who are enrolled in our CAP program repair on-property leaks that are contributing to high bills. And customers are eligible to receive up to $9,000 in assistance. And we've been able to help 123 customers in the amount of $574,000. Next slide. And the last assistance program that I'll touch on today is our Emergency Customer Relief Fund. In December of 2025, we launched the $2.4 million Customer Relief Fund in partnership with United Way of the National Capital Area. This relief fund provides up to $750 in one-time assistance for customers while those funds remain available. Since the program launch, $407,000 has been distributed to 612 customers in Montgomery County. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for that presentation. Before I let you go, I know we'll have our CIP conversation with you in a few weeks, but to a broader point, we've had the longest cold spell in nearly a century. How have our water pipes fared? Which clearly has a direct relation to cost. It absolutely does.
Yeah, our crews have been busy. Our crews have been very busy. We're glad to say that we've remained on top of our breaks and leaks. We have brought on additional staff, frontline employees, contractors to make those repairs just as quickly as we can. Repairs typically take 4 to 6 hours. It's taking a little longer with those increased breaks, but we're happy to say that we're making great progress. Thank all of our community members and neighbors who have called those breaks and leaks in. They're difficult to see under the snowcrete, I think is the new term. So I think we're faring well. Thank you for the question.
Yep, thank you for that update and to your colleagues as well. Really insightful presentations. We were all taking copious notes with all the data and all the questions that you've raised. I have a few, and then we'll open it up to my colleagues. But let me start with Mr. Lapp, and that's where we started before. One of the commonalities throughout all the presentations is that demand keeps increasing, but supply is not there. What residents know is that it is cold outside, but their utility bills keep rising and are high. And so from your perspective, and I guess maybe it's directed towards our energy in particular, but with all of the increased demand and load, where do you see that coming from? Is it the increased data centers? Is it the, and the data centers from Pennsylvania, Illinois, Ohio, and Virginia, making up a larger portion of the PJM load growth? But more broadly, what should we be looking at as identifiers for these rate increases? And I'll ask you the secondary question is, what do we need to get out of that cycle? Turn your microphone on. There you go.
Excellent question. The PJM runs these capacity market auctions, and those are for reliability purposes. They are held in advance. So a lot of those you saw in my slide, I think it's on page 7, upper right, you see the spike in those prices. Those are those auctions, they're being held closer in time, but they're supposed to be held 3 years in advance of the year that those costs hit customer rates. So those costs increases for PEPCO started in August, and they are implemented 1 month at a time. So we're not actually seeing that big price spike. That's the first year. So up until August, that we were at a low point in the capacity market. That's the capacity market, and that's for reliability. And now the other slide that I showed on page 8 shows that demand in Maryland for the Exelon utilities is still actually decreasing. I'll give you an example, and PEPCO is similar, but I know the BGE numbers off the top of my head. In 2011, BGE hit a peak demand. And when I say peak demand, that's what the system is built for reliability purposes, to meet the demand on the hottest day in the summer. That peak demand for BGE was 7,600 megawatts. Today, it's about 65 or 6,600 megawatts, 1,000 less. And that's because of energy efficiency, lighting in particular, but appliance standards. All that is driving down that peak demand. And my slide 8 shows that peak demand for the Exelon utilities continues to decline through 2029. So Maryland is not causing this demand growth. It's all happening outside of Maryland. Maryland does not have any specific reliability issues. If there are problems with brownouts or blackouts, it's because there are across PJM. And Maryland is just going to be treated like other states within PJM, and there'd be rolling blackouts. But these capacity market auctions have, through the most recent auction, they've cleared enough capacity to meet the projected peak demand for the next couple years. In the latest one, they have a reserve goal above what expected is the peak. And the reserve is, if power plants go offline, it's 20%. They met 14% of that. And then afterwards, in the 2026 forecast, which my numbers are based on, they actually reduced that peak demand by the size of the load of the city of Pittsburgh, over 3,000 megawatts. So there is an issue. It's coming forward in future years, and it's these data centers in the states, really outside of Maryland. I think that's primarily answers. I did want to address the import issue, because it's important to understand that Maryland imports, and Stephanie, I just want to correct you, it's about 40%, not 60%. But that's just an average. That's not a reliability metric. That's just consumption over the course of a year, and it reflects economics. Maryland can generate a whole lot more. And in fact, like when we hit that June high temperatures in June, really high, Maryland was producing in-state like 70, 80, and even a little more than that. And that's because we needed more expensive generation to run that normally isn't selling, can't compete in the market. And when it can't compete, it's competing with generation throughout PJM, and customers benefit from that competition because it's lower price. PJM dispatches the most economic, and that's what that percentage increase. Maryland has been an importer forever. At least since 1990, that's the data you can pull up quickly. Maryland's imported, It varies, 20 to 40%. 40% is about the high point. But that metric it's not a reliability metric.
So thank you for expanding upon that. And so I'll ask Ms. Friedman, clearly the presentation that you made, noting that the $16.34 increase approximately, about half of that is from increased demand. So if we're going to try to square this and get to the root of it, is that increased demand from Pepco customers, or is it actually from other regional users like data centers?
Yeah, so can I just clarify something? So PJM is a consortium of 13 states, right? And so what being a grid operator means and what being a grid means is that the substations and the lines are connected to each other. And I think that seems really simple, but what that means is they're using electricity from each other. They're pulling from each other. So just because Virginia data centers are going up everywhere and Maryland is not right now, like whether Montgomery County puts a data center in today, but Virginia is putting them in tomorrow and the next day and the next day, Montgomery County may not, but it still may affect Montgomery County. And I think that's maybe the point I want to get across here. And that's sort of why supply and demand is still important in Maryland.
Sure.
And why Marylanders in Montgomery County are seeing their bills still go up. So in Ohio and the other states where we're seeing demand go up, Maryland is still affected.
And so so I appreciate that.
Yes.
And let me reframe the question, right? If about 50% of the monthly rate increase is due to increased demand, is it fair to say that that demand is from outside of Montgomery County and we're paying other people's bills?
I don't know that you'd say you're paying other people's bills, but I think it's within PJM, it's kind of outside your control a little bit. You're within PJM, you're kind of paying everyone's bills, so a little bit, yes
So
and no.
You're living.
Yes
let
and no.
Let me try this analogy. You're living in a group house and everyone has their food in the fridge, and sometimes you don't quite know whose food is what, but that's the food you have.
Yes and no.
Okay, I don't know if that worked, but
Yes.
that's what came to mind immediately. And then one last question, then I'll open it up to colleagues. Ms. Bolton, from the PSC perspective, you had said that over the last year there was a 79% increase in complaints. Is that largely because of the increased cost that people are seeing on their bills?
Emphatically, yes.
Okay, succinct. Appreciate that. I'll turn it over. Whoever wants to go first.
I have a question that
There you go.
follows up, if that's okay.
Please, yes.
Councilmember
Stewart.
Balcom may have a similar question because I think it's many of her constituents. Ms. Friedman and Mr. Lab, I was curious in some of the comparisons, Mr. Lab, in your, I think it's slides 6 and 7, comparing Pepco to Potomac Edison, because some of our residents, I think Councilmember Balcom's residents, receive Potomac Edison, and the differences there in terms of, because Potomac Edison is still PJM, correct?
Yep.
So why are we seeing Pepco's rates go up? And if I looked at the slide correctly, we're not seeing Potomac Edison's rates go up at the same rate, the same amount.
Yeah, so Potomac Edison is vertically integrated. And I am not the expert on how to explain being vertically integrated, but essentially they generate in-house. So they generate their own supply in their own state. So they are allowed to generate electricity. Pepco is not allowed to generate electricity right now. And so we are not able to reinvest what dollars that would generate back into our customers. I actually heard a statistic that Mr. Lab said today that it is 3 times, right? 3 times for Synergy. bills. So that tracks, because Maryland customers are seeing their bills go up way higher than Virginia. And that's because they're not having to generate because they're already doing it. We have to catch up because we're not generating. Because First Energy is vertically integrated. They're in-house generating.
Yeah, I mean, with all due respect, it's not correct. Potomac Edison, all the Maryland utilities, none of them are vertically integrated. Potomac Edison procures its supply through standard offer service, just like the Exelon utilities. So that's not a reason. They are subject to the same market prices for generation, energy, and capacity. So that they're subject to the same thing. They have affiliates. Potomac Edison is the Maryland affiliate. It cannot do that. It cannot generate electricity. It can't under Maryland law. Now, its affiliates in other states may own some generation, but they sell under the same PJM market as all the other generation. And so Potomac Edison does not reap any benefits from that. But the main point is that the costs that I'm talking about that are shown in my graph on page 6 have nothing to do with the capacity market or supply. Those are distribution costs, completely different part of the bill. And those costs, and what I said is if PEPCO gets the rate case increase that it's requesting, which would be the 9th since it was acquired by Exelon. So they're saying, they've had 2 years of flat rates. Well, that's because the commission rejected the rate increase that would have occurred this year, and now they're in for another very substantial rate increase on top of almost, essentially 8 years of, nearly 8 years of consecutive rate increases. But these are distribution costs, and they're completely separate. So you can't compare the supply costs or the capacity market to these distribution costs. And I mean, one valid point, which I expected to hear, is that they have different systems, and that's true. They have different geographies, different territories, and so their costs are going to be different. But if you look at the rate of increase shown in that graph, their rates aren't increasing at the same rate. They've had 2 rate cases, 2 increases in 25 years. PEPCO's had, this is the 9th since 2016. So that's what's driving up that graph. It has nothing to do with supply costs.
Thank you. Thank you for that distinction. One other question, and actually this is panel, thank you to the chair, very timely, because actually my neighborhood listserv has been a buzz lately as people get their utility bills. But one of the things that we've been hearing in our office quite a bit lately is residents who have signed retail energy providers as an alternative to receiving standard offer service electricity from their distribution utility. And we've heard concerns that many of those contracts have ended. People are writing in, and that it's no longer possible to switch to a retail energy provider. And so trying to understand for our constituents what this means, and I'm not sure who. Mr. Lab, if you want to take that one.
I referenced that in my initial presentation. This is really just about the supply portion of the bill. And what a lot of customers don't understand is that they can't escape the escalating distribution costs, which I was just referring to by shopping. But what we had is a big problem with rogue companies who, quite frankly, were gouging customers. Not all the companies, but a lot of them. We litigated with a lot of them, before the PSC. And so 2 years ago, there was Senate Bill 1, which enacted a lot of consumer protections, but it also had some provisions that really do make it hard for retail suppliers to compete in Maryland. They're still allowed to, technically, but it's hard for them to compete on price. And so right now, you don't see offers out there. And it has to do with the way the price cap is set, because the standard offer service that a non-shopping customer pays for, it's basically the utility default service, It's based on forward-looking. Based on these forward-looking prices in the PJM market, and the price cap is set on a 12-month trailing on a trailing average, which means that when prices are going up, retail suppliers find it very difficult to compete on price. There may be, there's talk of legislation to try and fix that. We get calls in our office. I'm sure the PSC does. Yeah. Our consumer assistance unit, people are like, why can't I shop? A lot of it is customers not understanding that the difference between supply and distribution. They think they can just get away from the utility monopoly, and they can't as far as distribution service goes.
Great. Ms. Bolton, did you have something to add? Or?
Yes, as a result of the SB1 legislation that David referenced, we at the Commission have been tracking the amount of expense incurred by consumers per utility that were under retail supply contracts versus standard offer service, and there is no utility out there where consumers were overall saving money. Mm-hmm. It was a broken market, and Marylanders were hemorrhaging money as a result of that market construct. The reforms were necessary, and the Commission supported them when a key component of the legislation was enacted in January of 2025. My office received a number of complaints. That was around the time when a lot of supplier contracts were dropping customers and people were confused. We did have a handful of people who called and said, I don't know why my supplier is dropping me. I don't feel this is fair. I look at SOS, the standard offer service rate. I look at what I was paying my supplier, and I'm going to lose money on this. But for every one person we had that came to us with that complaint, we had 3 more who came to us and said, what is the supplier? Why am I getting this notice? Why was I paying 16 cents a kilowatt hour, 23 cents a kilowatt hour when my utility was charging way less than that, apparently. And that is how we ended up where we are when it comes to the retail energy supply market. I hope that the reforms that came out of SB1 will eventually make the market into what it should have been in the first place. Something where people can participate in the market through, say, the Maryland Public Services Commission's Maryland Energy Choice website. It was a retail energy shopping website where the retail suppliers posted essentially their best offers and allowed customers to come on and choose the best of the offers, green offers, whatever was applicable to them. But too often the marketing around third-party retail energy preyed on the most vulnerable in these communities. And that is how we ended up here.
Thank you. I very much appreciate that description of the issue. I think last thing, and I appreciate that the committee session also looked at how we're communicating with residents about programs that are available. Appreciate the ongoing communication from WSSC and PEPCO. Washington Gas, we need more communication from you all. I'm going to be honest. We don't get it as much as we do from PEPCO and WSSC, and our offices would love to know more about different programs you have and other things. I think we've for whatever reason, we have good communication channels with PEPCO and WSSC. That includes when most of the time, when there are breaks and other issues. Again, with Washington Gas, I think we need to work on just better paths of communication, which would be really helpful, I think, for our residents, because we're hearing from them, and our team can quickly, point to PEPCO programs, point to WSSC, and we have to hunt a little bit more when it comes to Washington Gas. So, thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Balcom.
Thank you. Thank all the partners that we work with. And for the time that you take in educating us. It's very much appreciated. So I just want to clarify a couple terms that people are using, and I don't know if you're using them interchangeably. So is delivery distribution and transmission all the same thing?
Delivery and distribution are the same thing, and transmission is, really a part of delivery. But when we talk about transmission, we're talking about wholesale, a wholesale cost that is not regulated by the state. So when we talk about distribution and generally delivery, we're really talking about the distribution rates that are set, that are utilities come in, they ask for increases, and the commission approves them or part of them, and that's the distribution, and we sort of use that interchangeably with delivery. Transmission is regulated primarily by FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, but it sort of passes through PJM. And there's a little bit of overlap as far as, the state may have a siting case, a certificate of public convenience and necessity over a transmission line. So there is a little bit of state regulation there, but not over the costs. Okay. And the transmission costs are they come in the supply portion of the bill. So when we're just looking at the supply portion, and I explained earlier how fast those transmission costs, almost tripling over the last 10 years. And that's actually contributing to the supply portion of the bill. So when people think supply, it's energy, capacity, and transmission. Those are the primary components. Energy is by far the biggest. It's about 50%. Transmission, since 2019, has become the next biggest. And then capacity is less than that. So all the talk about capacity, it's actually the third biggest. It's about, in the range of 20%. That can go up depending on how the other prices move. But, and I should have said earlier to the chair's question that a lot of these supply costs, we're seeing increases in the supply costs. And, there are supply cost increases. Most of them are on the energy side. And a lot of them and the energy side is influenced most by the commodity price of gas. And that's because the generation that sets the price at PJM, it's like the last increment of generation at any given time sets the price. And 70 to 80% of the time, that's a gas power plant. And so the fuel cost for powering that gas power plant is what affects the supply cost the most out of any other cost. And that, we have a war in Ukraine, that goes up,
And that is what
Yeah.
PJM, that's the PJM
Yes,
portion.
yeah. PJM runs a day ahead and a real-time energy market, and that sets the price for that energy. It's changing all the time.
Okay.
And it's most affected by the commodity price of gas, which obviously the state can't really do much about.
My second question in terms of terms, and you've answered it, the capacity market capacity market's part of supply, right? And so it's energy, transmission, and capacity market make up the supply portion of the bill.
If we were more precise, we would always break out capacity and energy from transmission, but because it sort of all comes through PJM as part of a bill, it all sort of falls in the supply portion of the retail customer when they look at it. There's also a little bit of what we call ancillary services, which is really small. Mm-hmm. So it's, capacity, energy, and the ancillary services, and then, but that's a small component, but it's for related support services for energy.
Thank you. Yeah. And I think that probably the most complex and misunderstood part of this equation is PJM and how PJM fits into this, right? So the page 10 of your slides, when we look at the percentage of load growth, right, from Ohio, Virginia, Illinois, Pennsylvania, and is that Ohio?
Yes.
Compared to Maryland. So do all the states essentially get the same rate Or do the states get different rates?
It's an excellent question. I'll try and keep it simple. First, I should say that when growth is caused by data centers outside the state, that's what I was referring to.
Yes.
There's a lot going on to try and make sure that Maryland is not responsible for those data centers, and that there's a big effort at PJM. We are very heavily involved. We're actually a member of PJM, but not an influential member. The state, the 13 states plus DC, there are 14 of us, and we each have a vote, but there's well over 1,000 votes in PJM. And the way the voting structure works is the utilities, and to some extent the generators, have the most power and influence in terms of PJM. And PJM runs the transmission systems of the utilities, and the utilities are voluntary members, so there's some leverage that the utilities have there. And we see that on a daily basis. We are on PJM calls, and we've litigated all that. So when the price is set, PJM is divided, it's the whole region, but then there's sub-regions. Okay. And generally, the costs are the same throughout the region, except if there's congestion on the system, then sub-regions can experience higher cost. And that has been the case at different times for Maryland because of transmission constraints coming into Maryland that are being addressed by a major investment that BGE is responsible for. They doubled their costs from $750 million to $1.5 million after like a year and a half, and BGE customers are paying for that. PEPCO customers are also paying a share, but that project is going to relieve all that congestion. And the last two capacity market auctions, Central Maryland has cleared at the PJM-wide price. So that's not always an issue, but it can be an issue. That was part of what the Delmarva South case was about, but it can be a little bit different.
I think you lost me.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I should just say that generally speaking, the costs are uniform throughout PJM. There can be higher costs under some situations for specific areas.
So, and thank you. And that was kind of my understanding that each jurisdiction pays the same regardless of what their load growth is in that area, right? So.
Yes, and what we're talking about is energy and capacity.
Yes.
Transmission costs are sort of a different situation because Maryland in the past 2 years, and then we're going to have another one very soon. PJM is basically saying it was $6 billion and then $6.5 billion, and this year it's going to be over $11 billion. So over 3 years, about $24 billion in transmission infrastructure that is being built. The first 2 years primarily for data centers in Northern Virginia, and the current one is more data centers in Pennsylvania. But the way half of those costs are spread out across PJM entirely, but the other half are allocated according to a complicated methodology that I won't explain, but it ends up being to the customers who are closer to the data centers. And so Maryland, for the first two, about $12 billion in investments, Maryland customers are paying about $800 million. We've challenged that, and we have been challenging those costs at FERC because we're saying that's not fair. Those are data centers driving those costs,
Sure.
Not Maryland customers.
Thanks, and that was somewhat my understanding. A lot more words thrown in, but I appreciate that. So I think that, and that's something that, thank you for trying to argue the point that we shouldn't be paying that cost.
We're gaining traction, I should say.
But I think an interesting thought exercise would be if that were the case, where each jurisdiction paid for their load growth in that jurisdiction. The flip side of that would be, what if that jurisdiction could only use the amount of data that is in their jurisdiction, because we haven't talked about that, right? So when we talk about the data centers in Virginia, if Virginia bears the cost of that, if the ratepayers in Virginia bear the cost of that, but the majority of our data in Maryland flows through that data center, I think that is another form of equity that we haven't even talked about.
I understand the point. I think I would say that it shouldn't be, I mean, Virginia can do what it wants, but Virginia ratepayers, just like we have a proceeding going on at the commission right now to develop a tariff, which is a set of rules for data centers. And the idea behind that tariff and that proceeding, and it's out of the legislation last session, is that the data centers pay their costs. And then they figure out, you know, how to, you know, they're in the best position to either charge their, you know, Google, you know, whoever's running the AI searches, or better, figure out ways to more efficiently run so they aren't using all this power. So we're not talking about, we're trying, and it gets mixed up with jurisdictional issues, but the idea is to get those costs as close as possible to the data centers. And in Maryland, we have a tariff. Virginia is developing a tariff too to require data centers to incur all those costs, not the rest of the customers, but to have the data centers do it. And then they can figure out, do they need to charge a fee for doing a chat GPT or whatever?
Is that, and this will be, we could go on all day.
Yeah.
Is that state legislation, or is that a PJM decision? Who would make that decision?
That's an excellent question, and that's something that we are sort of battling over every day. So Maryland can control data centers within the Maryland's borders. So we're going to have we're sort of trying to put together this large load tariff, this set of rules for data centers in Maryland, and the clear intent of the Maryland legislation is data centers should pay their full freight. Now, we have lots of arguments about what that means. We want to make sure distribution, transmission, generation, everything, because they can drive up energy costs, and that gets sort of buried. And then Virginia can do the same. And then at the same time, PJM has this process it's been going through. It started last fall. We're one of the entities that really pushed the process. It's called a Critical Issues Fast Path. And there, we're trying to get PJM to allocate to the zone where the data centers are the cost responsibility, but then it would be up to retail regulators, the state commissions, to in turn decide who's going to pay those costs, whether they spread it out among residential customers or whether they say what makes sense is those data centers that are in that zone, they should bear those costs. But it's a mix of federal state jurisdiction. And, you know, so we're always navigating these sort of jurisdictional lines, which is why we address this issue for Maryland data centers at the Public Service Commission here, but the rest of it we have to advocate through PJM and FERC, and also keep our fingers crossed that the Public Service Commissions in other states, you know, handle it appropriately.
Okay, thank you.
A lot of discussion, lot of really detailed responses and analyses and questions. I'm not sure if this was an undergraduate class or a graduate class, but I know that there's more to learn and more to discuss. And so appreciate you all sharing some of those updates and my colleagues for diving deeper, wanting to make sure that first and foremost we maintain good levels of communication with all of you, because when people text us and DM us with various issues, we need your assistance up front. But let me close this way. This conversation was geared towards us being able to tell our residents why they are getting utility bills that keep rising and rising. It, quite frankly, was not a conversation about data centers. But through this conversation, there are clearly utility needs and loads that put strain on Montgomery County and our ratepayers that are to some degree outside of our control, which is frustrating. It is frustrating being an elected official and trying to help people with ever increasing costs and tell them that it is a state issue, it is a regional issue, it is a national issue, knowing that the governors of Maryland and Virginia were just at the White House just a few weeks ago to talk about some of these same problems. And so we certainly will be following up with our colleagues in Annapolis and the new chair of the PSC, who we all know very well here in Montgomery County, Chair Barve, of course. But ultimately, we need to do a better job of making it a more affordable place to live. And if that means determining how we support more energy production, green energy production, if it means we take a closer look at data centers and confine the growth of them, and also make their data and energy use more equitable, and having those companies pay their fair share of utility costs. These are all things that are on the table, and we're just starting that conversation right now. And so appreciate you all coming, making sure that everybody is healthy and safe and warm in their homes during this frigid winter. But we will certainly be in touch. We'll be in touch with our colleagues in Annapolis, and appreciate you all spending your afternoon with us. So thank you very much. And with that, we're adjourned.
Thank you.